A meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
Mm, yeah, there's a lot of things to do. That's kind of like this that March.
Uh,
Those other than some people, probably April, May is kind of something, you know, on Facebook. That's my thing that we do live, maybe something.
a meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
Hello, hello. Hey, hello, hello. Hey, Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the joint meeting with the Lexington City School Board. I'd like to call the Lexington City Council to order and ask Chairman Diet to call the school board to order.
Yeah, I'd like to call the Lexington School Board to order.
Excellent. Thank you all for our semi-annual visit. We can visit more frequently if necessary, and certainly all of us would love to be meeting in person and look to have the pandemic behind us much sooner than later. Would like to, in essence, turn the meeting over to you, Tim, to any comments that you have. Our purpose tonight really is much like is typical in October, to take a look at the start of the year, the attendance, look at budget, see how things are looking so far, and any thoughts, concerns, or exciting positives that are going on with the city schools.
Sure. I'll turn it over to Rebecca here in just a second. But I did want to thank City Council for being supportive of the schools, for both monetarily and and reaching out as well during this challenging time. And I know the administration and the teachers have all been working so hard, and of course our families throughout Lexington and everyone who's been taking care of kids and has that responsibility. It's been a very challenging time, and we're really excited last night to be able to vote to move towards in-person instruction here in a couple of weeks, get more kids in school. I don't want to say get kids in school, because as Rebecca will point out in a bit, we do have folks that are in school now. So it's been a challenging time, but also in many ways it's been personally the most rewarding time, frankly, to be on the school board, because it's been important work that we've been working through. It's been challenging. But I'm very grateful for Rebecca's leadership and the rest of the school administration team. I know, hasn't always, we don't have a public relations team, and maybe that's shown sometimes, but but the work has been there, and we're certainly working hard on the areas where I think we may have fallen short. And so look forward to this time together. And I know Rebecca has a presentation for us all.
Thank you all very much. It's always a wonderful time to be able to get with you all each fall and of course each spring as we discuss our school community and the work of the school division as we move forward together, particularly during this most unique start to the school year and very challenging time for our community and our world, actually. So I have some information to share with you all this evening at the request of the mayor and our city manager. I did not provide a specific agenda, but I think you'll find the agenda follows through the lines that you all were interested in hearing about typically at this point in the year. So I did want to start, of course, with talking about the opening of our school year, which definitely looks a little different, as you can see from the pictures here. I was looking back at last year's presentation in October, and we had pictures of our opening convocation event, and we had pictures of our guest speaker and all the different professional development activities and some of the first day of school pictures and beginning of the year events and all the things that we are usually celebrating during a typical time of year. But as you can see, even looking around our own community at the events that have been canceled and postponed and changed and made to be virtual events or pickup events and things like that, things in our school look different as well. So what you can see from this picture is we have started as a school district in a primarily virtual model for most of our students in kindergarten through 8th grade. Instruction has been delivered live from our teachers with at-home learning experiences for all of our students. There are some districts that are providing both synchronous or live instruction, and other school divisions that are doing most of their instruction offered asynchronously, so without live instruction from their teachers. And I will repeat what Tim said. Our teachers have been working extremely hard, learning new methods of instruction and technically rebuilding their curriculum in the way that they're teaching in a way that they never have before. We have very often found ourselves saying we are all first year superintendents. We are first year teachers and paraprofessionals and principals because education doesn't look the way that it typically looks in a regular year. And like 80% of the students across the state of Virginia, K through 12, our students started the year virtually. So we've worked very hard to make gains in our skills with technology. We're very excited that we were able to add a full-time ITRT last year to our budget. And that person has been incredibly a great asset to both of our schools, along with our technology team and helping us and help our families work through some of the initial technology struggles that we have had. But we definitely have made some gains. I wanted to share also, along with opening up in a virtual model, that meals are served at our schools Monday through Friday. We do have a pickup program at both schools each day where our students who are learning either on site, they can get lunches there, or they can pick up lunches, or some of our students walk and pick up lunches from their homes each day. And we are providing counseling services through our school counselors who are working directly with children and families and trying to make sure that we are providing for students' mental and social emotional needs as well during a time that we can't do that in our buildings. So regarding the opening of the school year, as Tim mentioned, we do have students that are currently in our schools. We have about 30 students with specialized supports of special education services that are coming into our school for instructional support and academic help. We have preschoolers in our Head Start program that are attending several days a week in our elementary school. We are very blessed to have a great partnership with the local YMCA, and they worked with us about setting up an enrichment center at Lilburn Downing Middle School, and they're serving about 12 children there in that facility. Some are our children and some are children from the county. Several of our students are learning with Miss Tammy Dunn down at the Office on Youth, and she's been an incredible learning coach. I get to step down there a couple days a week and interact with those children and see how things are going from the other side of the computer. And Tammy has been an incredible resource and a great advocate for those students in our community. We have additional students who are coming into school to get academic support that we've been able to recognize, not a large number at either building, but a number of students who have really struggled with the virtual learning, whether they don't have great support at home or whether they have great support at home and it's just hard for them anyway, or they're making it's difficult for them to be engaged through a virtual model. So we have had a number of students over the last several weeks. We've added more and more each week, actually, as we've gone that are coming in and participating in their virtual learning on site, where they can have some support from instructional folks in our building or support from our counselors and some of our paraprofessionals. And then we do have about 30 employees' children who are in our buildings as they complete their virtual learning each day on site. They are there as part of the child care program that Dr. Elaine of the Virginia Department of Education recommended to all school districts to provide some form of child care for employees' children so that our teachers can continue to teach during the day and their children can have learning support. Those children are in our building, both buildings, and it kind of varies. They are not there every day, but they're there some days. So we have had a number of students in our buildings, which has given us a great opportunity to practice some of these key mitigation strategies in our schools. We have adopted a universal masking policy for all of our schools. If you have followed any of the CDC or VDH guidance, you have seen the information on masks and how that has evolved since March. We initially started with a less strict policy, and we moved quickly once the guidelines changed to a universal policy where all students and staff wear masks in our school unless medical exemption is noted. We are working hard to encourage, promote, and teach good practices of hand washing and the use of hand sanitizer. We provide scheduled opportunities for that during the day, but also we've installed hand sanitizer stations around both buildings, and they're providing those times during the day where our students and our staff can be encouraged to hand wash as much as possible. We are working very hard to promote social distancing of 6 feet whenever possible. As you know, with little kids, it's kind of hard to do that, and we're working really hard to promote that, the importance of that, even when they are outside, but definitely when they are in our buildings. Our custodial staff has done an amazing job with regular deep cleaning and disinfecting practices and procedures, which certainly has increased what their job looks like on a typical basis. And we have been in weekly contact and regular updates and meetings and conferences with our local health department and officials from the Virginia Department of Health. So lots of different things in place to make sure that the folks who are currently in our buildings, and as we're preparing for that return to school, that we can hopefully keep folks as safe and healthy as possible. So again, speaking to the opening of the school year, I wanted to talk a little bit about our school nutrition services. We are very pleased that our food services staff worked through the end of May, the end of our school year, in the spring, serving meals in a drive-by pickup program at Lilburn Downing. It was a summer feeding program provided through the state USDA program that provided 5 days of meals to any participating families. And this was not just Lexington City Schools families. This was any children in the area under age 18. And that program kind of evolved and changed as we participated. At first, an adult had to be there, or the child had to be there to pick up the meal, and then the program changed and an adult could pick up the meal for the children. There were no requirements for names or any identifiers at all, so anyone could pick up meals for a number of students. And we were glad to be able to continue that program through May. That program did continue through the summer months with a partnership with Rockbridge County Public Schools. We have limited staffing availability at our schools. We have actually a very small school nutrition staff. Several of our staff members were unable to continue working through the summer, which was a not typical time for them to have to work. They had some health issues. We had some that were out on leave. And so we had a wonderful partnership with Rockbridge County to continue that program with meals pickups at Maury River Middle School throughout the summer. And since the start of the school year, our food services staff have served on average about 190 to 250 meals per day. That's breakfast and lunch total. And that's compared to about 150 to 175 meals that we would serve during normal school operations. So our meals numbers are up right now, which is a really good thing for us. It's a good thing for us in terms of reimbursement. It's a great thing for our community because we know that our children are having access to nutritious meals. Our staff's doing an amazing job. They are serving hot meals every day. So this is not a bag meal. The summer feeding program that we had were some prepared meals, prepared foods, and nothing that was heated at the time. So this fall, we felt it was really important to do hot meals. Our cafeteria staff has done a beautiful job of that. But that does require a little different level of work because we have needing to package every meal that goes out. So it's not served on a tray. It's not, they're not going through a line, and that will continue as we open schools as well. So every meal has to be packaged in an individual container. and it has to be temperature maintained in order to be safe served to our students. So our custodians have actually been a wonderful support of that as well. If you think about our elementary setup, Jamie, if you'll go back to that for 1 second. If you think about the elementary setup, the cafeteria is downstairs and our food pickup is upstairs in front of the building. So we have folks that are bringing meals up from downstairs on a cart, up the elevator, only a certain number of times so that we can keep them at the proper temperature as those cars are coming through the parking lot. But it's been a beautiful system, and we've been really pleased with the number of meals we've been able to serve this fall. And again, just to remind you that the latest news that came out last week is that we were providing these free meals per the USDA through the end of December. And last week, the announcement came out that those meals are going to continue free for all students and all children under age 18 through the end of this coming school year. So through June, which is really exciting for our families. So any families can take advantage of those meals. So as we return students to school, we have a pretty strong feeling that those meals numbers are going to go up once people realize they don't have to pay for lunch every day. They don't have to pack lunch every day for their families, or think about how to figure out how to come up with something that their children will eat in a lunchbox every day. And I know it's been a great saving time thing for many of our families, even now. So we're excited about that. And again, we do receive reimbursement for each of those meals that are served. Moving on, we are talking a little bit about our custodial staff. We have, as I have shared with you all in the past, we have a relatively small custodial staff. We have 2 full-time custodians in both buildings, and you've been in Waddell. That's a huge building. I think I counted when I first moved in there, there are something like 17 bathrooms that have to be cleaned during a school day among 3 levels of classrooms and offices and floors. And having been in our buildings, I think you can see that we're very proud of the work that our custodians do. They keep a beautiful building. Dr. Lane, our state superintendent, and the First Lady made a visit to our schools back in early September, and that was one of the comments that they had was, what a beautiful, well-kept building that you have. So we're very proud of those buildings and the work that those folks do for us. They have been working very hard. We do have, again, full staffs in our building. We have students that are in our building. We have folks that are coming in and out on a daily basis. And these new COVID guidelines and procedures require more frequent cleaning and disinfecting of high-touch surfaces. So, for instance, our bathrooms that we get touched a couple times during the day are now being cleaned on the hour. They're touching things like doorknobs and handrails and door faces and light switches and all those places that people put their hands as they go, the copy machine. I mean, all the things that you don't think about, the phones, all the things that need to be cleaned and disinfected throughout the day, as well as our activity bus. As it is run, there is a fogging of that after every run. So once the students come and they get off, the custodian goes on and fogs that bus to disinfect before the next group gets on, and so forth. So we do that a couple times a day as well. And I'll mention just again how much help they have been to help support that middle of the day meals pickup in both of our buildings. So enrollment is a hot topic these days. If you have watched the news, it's been on the news. I think it was on all 3 channels a couple weeks ago locally about some of the concerns regarding many schools across the state and many schools across the nation who are facing enrollment loss. And we are just like everybody else. We've seen some loss in enrollment, and that's very hard to look at. We have experienced a drop in enrollment due to a number of reasons. I put our current enrollment numbers here for Waddell, Lilburn Downing, and Rockbridge County High School. And you can see there that our current budget was built on 656, and we're not there. We're at 630 right now. And there's a number of reasons why we have lost some students with enrollment. We had a large number of students that just moved from the area, people that moved out of Lexington City, that moved out of the state to lots of different places. We had a number of students, more than usual, apply for homeschool, some of those for health concerns. Some of those are students who have kind of been in and out of our schools as homeschoolers over the past. They may come in for a year and then they're out for a year doing homeschooling. Some of them were part-time homeschoolers that decided they were going to be full-time this year, and others that decided that they would rather homeschool than try to figure out the virtual instruction. We also had some students that enrolled in private schools in our area. They had very different layouts in terms of how their schools are operating in the fall, as well as other schools that enrolled, or other students that enrolled in other area schools, whether it was a school in Rockbridge County or a school in Buena Vista. Many of those are some of the younger students who were able to get those students in for in-person instruction in Buena Vista, or in-person instruction in Rockbridge when we didn't have in-person instruction being offered for the first weeks of the school year in Lexington. So hard to look at that. We are tracking every single student that we have lost. We're following up with those families. Now that we have a plan in place for the return to in-person learning, we're hoping that we will get some of those back. We had quite a few of them that said, so if we come out and you come back in with in-person learning, can we come back in? How does that work? What do we do? So we will be contacting and working with those families to try to get them back on roll if we possibly can. And we are hopeful that the bill will be moving forward in January for hold harmless. Hopefully you've seen that as well. Because this is such a big issue across the state, we are really hoping that a bill will go forward in January to hold our schools harmless for the enrollment loss, which means they will be able to look at our March 30 ADM from this past spring and use those numbers for state funding versus the September 30th ADM. That did not go through in the fall because they wanted to wait and see what happened with the September 30th numbers and see what happened across the state with our schools. But our state superintendent seems to be very hopeful that that will be reconsidered at the start of the year. If you've been on any of our school board meetings in the last couple of weeks, you've probably seen this virtual picture here. This is just highlighting some of the contributing factors as we made decisions about our next steps for a return for in-person learning. Again, we have followed since March the guidelines and direction from the Virginia Department of Health and the CDC. And if you're, again, watching the news or reading the newspaper, you see that those guidelines change daily. Lots of things have changed, new tools, new measures, new metrics have been offered even just in the last week. So we continue to keep updated with the most current information and guidance available to us. We have had weekly meetings and updates with the Virginia Department of Health through our weekly conference calls with the VDOE. We have weekly meetings with Dr. Cornegay and our local superintendents here in the Rockbridge, Lexington, and Buena Vista area. Dr. Cornegay and Amanda McComas from VDH in our region meet with our school nurses on a weekly basis. And she also, VDH has also met regularly with our regional superintendents group. And Dr. Cornegay actually made an appearance at our school board meeting last night, asked if she could come and talk with us a little bit about some of the guidelines and the current information as it is available to us with regards to our community. We are using the daily data reports from the CDC guidelines for decision-making for schools. And if you've seen this school metrics that's on the VDH website, this is the information that they provide to you. And they're looking at a couple of core indicators when we're looking at how schools should be looking at their levels of transmission. And the top indicator that we are looking at most days is this number of new cases per 100,000 during the last 14 days. And that's one of the key indicators they've asked us to consider, as well as the percentage of positive tests during the last 14 days in the community. And then this ability for schools to implement the 5 key mitigation strategies. And I've talked a little bit about that earlier, but that is determined at the school level. So they don't provide a rating, so to speak, for that particular indicator, but they have had us looking at these other 2. In addition, we have really been spending a lot of time monitoring other school districts who are in person or making plans for a transition to in person. And many schools, if you're watching the news pretty much every evening at 5 o'clock, you hear about Lynchburg or Roanoke County, Franklin County, all the different school districts, Pulaski, Montgomery, all the different plans that are in place as people are trying to decide, just like we have been, what their next steps are. Each morning I receive an email from the VSBA, the School Board Association, with the latest news articles from across the state regarding what schools are doing. 90% of those have been about COVID-19 and what schools are doing in their plans. And Lexington City was one of the articles today based on the school board meeting last night. So each day I'm able to read that. We've been able to use those articles to help us in our decision making and the strategies that we're putting into place for our plans. But people across the state and across the country are trying to figure out the exact same things. And certainly we have had lots of input offered from parents, teachers, staff, school board, and community members. And we have listened and read every email. We've listened to every comment, every phone call, every message that we've received, and really tried to take each one of those into consideration, even whether it's you would be surprised that we get things from both ends of the spectrum, from you're doing an amazing job and yes, this is smart and great job for doing this, to you've made the worst decision ever and how could you do this to me? So we're really taking everything into consideration and trying to keep all of those in mind as we're making the next decisions. This is what the indicator looks like on that decision making for the CDC. If you haven't seen that, you can actually go in and click on Lexington City, and it's updated daily. And they put a note, you can see here, this is the indicator as of 10 o'clock this morning for October 15th. The total number of new cases per 100,000 persons in the city, or which we don't have 100,000, is in the red. It's in the highest level of transmission. And so we've been watching that, and it's kind of been hovering somewhere in the 900 to 1,200 range over the last couple of weeks. And that has prompted us to have a lot of ongoing conversations with Dr. Cornegay again, because we keep calling her and emailing her and saying, okay, tell us how we look at this with regards to VMI and WNL and their impact on our community. And she's been very helpful in teasing out for us, looking at an epidemic curve on where most of the cases in our community can be narrowed down to that college age range of 18 to 24. And so we've been able to really look at that. And so as that has happened over the last several weeks or month or so, we track WNL's and VMI's data every day. We pull it up usually in the morning and the afternoon, because they have daily data reported on their websites. Whereas you can see here, this is for, over 14 days. Most of the data on VDH is a 14-day picture or a 7-day picture. But we've tried to put all those pieces together and work directly with her to get a better feeling for how we can interpret that data and make good decisions based on the fact that, yes, Lexington City is in the schools should be considered in the highest risk for transmission. But at the same time, we know that most of those cases are isolated to the universities. And what we have learned from working with her, and as they have watched what's happened in universities, and she mentioned to us, she works with a number of school districts in our region, and there are quite a few schools of higher learning in our region. And she's been able to see what has happened at JMU and see what has happened at Lynchburg College and see what's happened at WNL and VMI and be able to learn from that. And what they are noticing is that most of the cases are isolated to residential halls, to Greek living, and somewhat to athletics. And so they are not seeing as much transmission in the classrooms. They are seeing more transmission from student to student and not student to staff member, although there have been some faculty and staff members at the universities with cases. But that has been good learning information for us. And we're not seeing, after watching that data for several weeks now, we're not seeing a large spillover into the community at large. But it takes time to be able to watch that information and see how that impacts us as a community. And there was some reservation on the part of some of our board members who are very directly connected to the university, knowing that many of our parents are university employees and that our students are interacting with folks that are in the university to see what that looks like and how that happens. But we feel like we're at a pretty good place for that now that we've had that data and those ongoing conversations for a couple of weeks. So this kind of reiterates this. We've had weekly conferring with Dr. Cornegay and Amanda McComas regarding the universities and our local community data. Again, according to VDH, our universities seem to have a pretty good handle on the cases and the mitigation strategies. I've already mentioned where the cases are primarily linked. This delay that we had of in-person learning for the beginning of the year has allowed us to have a couple of things. If you heard our meeting last night by chance, Dr. Cornegay kind of alluded to this, that being able to delay there at the beginning allowed us time to learn from other school districts' experiences that did start in person, to see how they handled certain situations and how the mitigation strategies actually are working in those settings, to see what impact the local universities have on our community and the case levels, and to have additional resources and information from these experts that we've been asked to work with. So she mentioned last night, the information, this is a very novel virus and everybody's learning about this kind of at the same time. And what we knew in March is very different from what we know today. And what we knew at the end of August is even different than what we know today. And so lots of information to still come. VDH again emphasizes that one of the big factors as we're making this decision to return is, do we feel we can be successful with in-person learning using these 5 mitigation strategies? And we have worked very hard to put those pieces into place in our buildings to make sure that we have the PPE and the cleaning equipment that we need to be able to make sure that we're handling all these situations. We feel very confident with our plan moving forward that we will be successful with those strategies, as successful as we can be. She did reiterate last night that we will have cases. If you're watching schools across the area or schools across the region and state, there will be isolated cases, and we're hoping that we can minimize those, that we can minimize the risk of spread using these mitigation strategies and working closely with BDH. And they are prioritizing the return of our youngest students, which you'll see in our plan in just a moment, as well as priority groups such as our English language learners, students with disabilities, and students at risk. All three of those populations we have had in our buildings and have been offering in-person instruction for. And so now we're moving next with the step with our youngest students. So last evening, our school board approved a timeline to move forward with our return for in-person learning. Our plan will consist of in-person learning 4 days a week and 1 day of at-home learning on Fridays, which allows our staff time for professional development, collaborative planning, and preparation. And so they will do an asynchronous day on Fridays and then in-person learning in our schools. Of course, our students can elect to stay all 100% virtual learners. And of our survey several weeks ago to families, we had about 25% of our students who were going to remain virtual learners in this next phase. But we have just sent our plan out to families today with great detail about what the return to school looks like. And we have asked them to confirm with us their intention to remain virtual or to return in person by early next week so that we can start making those spacing considerations and finalize our staffing needs as we go through the reopening plan. So our kindergarten and first grade students are set to report back on the week of October 26th. We're going to have those children in our building for 2 weeks. One, because our kindergartners have never been in our buildings and they haven't been in to meet their teachers or to know what the building looks like and to be able to be in those buildings with the strategies and the very different situation that school will bring as a kindergartner. And we felt that was important for our 2 youngest classes to have some time in the building to acclimate to all the changes. School is not going to look like it typically looks. Our students are going to be seated 6 feet apart. And if you've been in our buildings, that's not the way our classrooms are typically set up. Our desks are usually set up in learning pods or in cooperative groups and sets of 2 or 4 at a time. And we have small group learning stations and kidney tables to have group instruction. And all of that just is not going to be possible. We're not used to having our students have to stay in one space all day long. And that's something that's going to be different for our students. We're primarily, when we're in the classroom, they're going to be isolated to one small area. So we're hoping to get our students outside and do learning outside as much as we can, as long as the weather holds up and as beautiful as it was today. Our 2nd, 3rd, and 6th graders will hopefully return the week of November 9th, followed by our 4th, 5th, 7th, and 8th graders the week of November 16th. So we feel that this is a good way to stagger in about 1/3 of our students at a time. That allows us to see if there are any things that we need to tweak regarding the logistics of how things are going to flow during the school day. It allows us to kind of ease into having those number of students back in our buildings. And I think it's a good plan moving forward. Again, families may elect to remain virtual for the 2nd quarter. That 2nd quarter ends on January 28th, 2021. So if they decide they're going to remain virtual, they will remain virtual at least until that point. We certainly will be getting back together as a group and as a board and as an administrative team all the time. But certainly before we get to that end of the 2nd quarter, to know how things are looking at the time. Are things different in our community? Are the situations, have they changed? Or do we need to possibly consider a different type of plan moving into that next quarter of the school year? And of course, this plan and any timeline would be contingent on any significant changes to community case levels or any community outbreaks that would impact our school community. So we will be monitoring that along the way. I'm going to pause for a second, maybe. Been a lot of talking, and see if you have any questions about that reopening plan, because the next piece goes more into budget.
Rebecca, I had one question. Earlier, you were talking about the different students that are in the buildings now. And I was just curious how many students Tammy had in her piece of the puzzle.
Currently, she's working with 4 students in that space. She has, and they're at a number of different grade levels, and she has 4 down there with her Monday through Thursday, and I think a couple of them still come in on Fridays for some extra support.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question just about the, when does the school day start for in-person learning and when does it end?
Sure. So our elementary day will start at 8:15 and it will finish at 2:45, except we will stagger our dismissal by releasing our upper grades about 10 minutes early so we don't have a bottleneck of all the children coming out at one time. We'll release our older students a little bit earlier so they can either get in cars and go or walk home, or they can wait for younger students. It's a little easier for them to wait a few minutes than it is to ask our youngest students to wait for their older siblings. At the middle school, their day will start at 8:30 and they will finish around 3. Although we have some students that the way their schedule works, their day may end at 2, depending on where their classes lie. The middle school schedule is a little bit of a beast. The beautiful thing about our schools is we're really small, but one of the challenging things is that we're really small. We have teachers who teach a number of courses at multiple grade levels, and it makes it a little challenging as you're trying to figure out, can we get our in-person classes scheduled and then have a separate virtual class? So that our teachers are trying to do both things at one time. And we've done a lot of puzzle working in the last couple of weeks trying to figure that out. And I would say we're about 80% there in terms of most teachers really being able to concentrate on in-person instruction at certain points in the day or virtual instruction. But some of our teachers, like our foreign language teachers who teach multiple levels at multiple grades, as well as some of our math teachers, it's made it a little more challenging. And so some of our students will have their courses finish up around 2 o'clock, and others may have band, which is kind of an extra elective that some students have, or may have like an academic lab that fits into their day that may have them staying a little bit later in the day.
And just one more other question
Sure.
about did Dr. Cornegay address like the flu vaccination and how is the school district? I don't know what your requirements were prior to COVID, but for this now flu season, are you requiring or making any more maybe stricter requirements for the teachers or students, or what anything happened on that front?
That's a great question. We do not require vaccines at the schools, but we do offer vaccines, and both of our schools have already had their flu vaccine clinics at both buildings. So our employees, any employees who wanted to take part in the flu vaccine, had that available to them. They were actually 2 Fridays ago. We will definitely encourage and promote vaccines to the point that we can't be political about that, but we want to let people know that those are available out there. The one thing she did address, she didn't address that specifically, but she did say what they're hoping is that with all the mitigation strategies in place, the hand washing and the hand sanitizer and the mask wearing and the distancing, that we're going to see a good impact on, a positive impact on the flu or the level of illness that we may see in our schools. And we're excited about that. So we think that those things will help. She did allude to Fishburne Military Academy as an example, because that is a K-12, well, I don't know if it's K-12, but it's not a university, but it is a residential school for school-age children. And what they are noticing is that they are not having to order as much medications that they would typically order this time of year to replenish some of their supplies for illness on their campus. And they are attributing that to the mitigation strategies that they're using that are hopefully preventing some of those illnesses. So we're really hopeful that maybe we won't see as much strep or as much flu as we go through the year.
I have a question or two. Will the shuttle be used, and then also will the art room, the media center, how will they be used or shared? As the school opens?
Those are great questions as well. So yes, our shuttle will be used. We did not use the shuttle the first few weeks of the school year. Once we started adding some additional students back in that did require some transportation services, we did pick back up with our shuttle bus. And so at the beginning of the year, we had sent out information to say, our transportation system looks a little different this year because we can only seat one student on each seat of the bus, the way that we've been recommended to set that up. So we asked families, if at all possible, if they can transport their student or allow their child to walk, that we're encouraging that. And we had a small number, manageable number for our run to be able to provide transportation. So our communication that went home today to families said, we have that list from the beginning of the year of those of you who said we need transportation. If your need has changed or you have a need, please contact Mr. White. We'll certainly work with those families. But I think we're at a good place where we can transport those who are in need of transportation, as well as some of our teachers' children travel back and forth on that bus, and sometimes they are on a second run in the afternoon. If we have, they take that second run, or the same thing with Miss Tammy's program. We have students that travel over for that program. So yes, that will be continuing. Regarding our specials, this is still a work in progress. We are working very closely with our art and music and PE and librarians, because that again is another really unique population that touches a lot of kids during the school day. So we are really trying to work with those individuals to figure out what's going to work best for their needs. We are very hopeful that our PE teachers will be able to take our kids outside for the most of their PE time, or use the gym. We feel good about that. Our elementary librarian is planning to go into the classrooms and do a lesson in the classrooms and take in a cart of books for children to be able to choose for checkout. And she's got her clean safety procedures ready for that. That'll be offered weekly. We are still working on our art program, trying to figure out whether that's going to be offered in the classroom or possibly virtually. We just need to fit where she would live stream into that classroom to provide art services. And we're just trying to figure that out logistically. And our music teachers the same way. We are trying to figure out what's the best way to offer those programs. Actually visited Central Elementary this morning and got to see how some of their specials are handling that. And I'm hoping to reach out to some other schools to get some ideas in these next couple of weeks so we can firm up how those programs look. But regardless, our students will have those programs on a weekly basis.
And I'll just say, I am happy to hear about the outreach that your staff, your team plans to do to families that may have, unenrolled and done something else for the first few weeks, because, I've been fortunate. I've listened and watched the school board meetings and had so many questions answered that I would have as a parent of 2 kids. And now I'm getting even more questions answered in it. And I think that it puts, my mind at ease for my kids. And not everyone, though, is able to watch all of these hours and hours of meetings. And so maybe truly that outreach will help.
Yeah.
Some targeted answering of questions, I think will help, because we all know that our school system is such a strength of the city, and we want those kids back. And of course, we want to do it safely. So I appreciate you guys doing that outreach.
Absolutely. We've got Mr. White, who works with our student services program, and our counselors and our administrators will be reaching out to many of those families, especially ones who said, please keep us posted so we know when we can come back. We know we won't get all of them back, because some of them have committed to other programs for the year, and we're hopeful that they'll return. But we got 2 phone calls today asking about non-resident applications, and we'll be taking kids out of district starting soon. So we're trying to take care of the students who have currently been on our roll or been in our schools first, and still be able to keep smaller numbers because of social distancing. So we're working on that. Thank you.
Rebecca, I have a question about the meals program. I'm a little curious how that works. If a parent comes in the morning to pick up, say, breakfast, can they pick up breakfast and lunch for their student, or do they have to come, in the morning for breakfast and then come again for lunch? How does that work?
Great question. So we do our meals pick up in the middle of the day at both schools. There's an hour of the day that's allotted for each building. They're kind of staggered on those timelines. And so when a family comes by to pick up meals, if they come by and they say, I need 4 meals, they're going to get lunch for that day and breakfast for the next day. So the breakfast is packaged separately. So they will pick up the lunches, the hot lunches, and then the breakfast is usually, it might be cereal or a cereal bar or fruit or something like that, and milks. We do milks and all those pieces as well. So they get breakfast for the next day.
That's great. One other question. You mentioned that your enrollment was down from what you'd projected. I think it was about 25 students. Is that about right?
Roughly.
Do you have some idea of the demographics of those students? I'd be curious if they were elementary students, if they were middle school, if they were high schoolers. I mean, Do you have a sense of that?
It's a mix. Our elementary number is higher, but our elementary enrollment is higher. We do have some middle school students, and I've not yet gotten the formal report from the high school. They were still working on their September 30th ADM to see what those numbers look like so that they could tease out the Lexington numbers. But we definitely want to follow up with those high school students as well, so that, or at least follow up with the high school so we know where those students ended up if they left. But we do have a number from both buildings, more elementary than middle, but that's also our population.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just really quickly, Dennis, wanted to say that for the meals, there's a form that's listed on our webpage that families go to between Friday afternoon and Monday morning and fill out how many meals, like they can go look at the calendar, figure out what their kids want. You click how many meals you need, you click which days you want them. And so it's just once a week that you have to go and fill that out. It's very straightforward. And I know a lot of families, including mine, have really been appreciating it.
That has worked really well, and that'll be modified. We actually just modified the process that'll go out to families in the next couple of weeks. So for your in-person learners, when they come to school that day, they will be able to order their lunch at school like they typically would. If they're a virtual learner and they're at home, they can still complete that weekly form online so that we know how many meals to prepare each day, and they will still be able to come to school. There'll be a 30 or 40-minute time in the middle of the day when their families can come by and pick up the meals for our virtual learners as well. So that program will continue. We're excited about that. In the spring, I'll add just as a little bit of a little showcase, I guess. In the spring, we had just started working on some great initiatives for our school nutrition program, and it got cut very abruptly in March. But one of the things that we did was we surveyed all of our students about their favorite meals and what they like about our menu and what they didn't. We didn't ask them what they didn't like. We just asked them to rank their favorite items on the menu. And we've actually redone our whole menu program for the schools. And so we now have kind of a rotating menu. So really every 3 weeks, you're going to see it'll be a 3-week rotation. And then that rotation starts all over again, which is really helping our cafeteria staff because they're able to better plan and be able to better purchase what they need. And that's been pretty exciting. We've added a lot of new menu items that were more popular and suggestions that kids had. One of the other things, then I'll get you Mayor Friedman, but one of the other things that we were really hoping to do is we were really working hard to try to do away with plastic and styrofoam and some of those things in our cafeteria. And we had some initial plans going for that. And then when this happened, we had to go back to packaging meals and not serving on trays. And so we're back to plasticware. And sadly, we're back to styrofoam containers because they are quite a bit cheaper than the biodegradable containers or the paper containers that we would purchase. But we are still very hopeful that we will be continuing to work on those plans once things return to a little bit more normal. So, Mayor Friedman.
I was just going to advance the conversation to the budget piece of it. Great information that you're sharing with us, and we can extend our time, but we are bumping up on the 8 o'clock hours.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll keep rolling. You all asked me to report on CARES Act, so you can see up here, I won't read this through with you, but Lexington City received an initial allocation. You can see what we used that for. The city of Lexington was gracious enough to allocate a part of their, I think it was 12% of your initial allocation for the city for the specific requests that are outlined there in front of you. We were then allocated, or you all asked if we had some additional needs, and we were able to identify some needs for technology, which you graciously offered a second allocation. And then I learned recently that an additional allocation was made on October 1st. In the meantime, we did apply for a competitive grant with the Governor's Emergency Relief Fund, and we did receive, I think we applied for about $32,000 and we received $19,000, which we were really excited about because that was funds that we weren't expecting. And that is meant to offset expenses already incurred in our budget for summer programming, special education facilities, and cleaning and disinfecting. So those funds will be able to apply for those, and those will come back to help support some of the expenses that we have already incurred. And then just as you all know, just I guess it's been now a week or so, we found out that we were receiving some CARES funds, a second round of CARES funds for the school division in the amount of $115,290. And there are very specific things that those funds can be spent on, and they must be spent by December 30th. And so we have some current considerations down there at the bottom. I've been working with Tommy in our finance office, and with our schools to figure out what our top needs are and how we can work on this to hopefully use the CARES funds for the purposes that they are meant for, but also perhaps help our general budget as well. So we are working on some creative ways to make that happen over the next couple of weeks. And in lieu of those funds that we just got last week, I've already communicated to you all that we will not use that additional 60,000 that you all offered there on October 1st.
Rebecca,
Yes.
so assuming that the hold harmless bill goes through and you're okay on ADM, and then you have the gear grant,
Yes.
where do you feel like your budget stands at this point?
It's coming up in a slide or two, Leslie, if that's okay, and I can show you where we are. Janie, that next slide I think goes into, this is very quick. I'm not going to hit highlights on this. I just wanted to show completed capital projects that you know about here in the city, our elective auxiliary opening and our beautiful stairs and sidewalks leading to the playground. And then these are some other pieces that we've had on our list for a while that we're hoping over the next year or two that we will be able to move forward with. So this is what Leslie was asking about, our budget updates. When we were looking at loss of state funding due to the lower enrollment, we were sitting at about 116,000. That does not include if we know something about the high school numbers, if they have changed, but again, that could affect our percentage with the schools. We just need to figure that out. We have experienced some loss of cafeteria walk-in sales. So those are the people who are coming in and just buying lunch during the day, whether it's students or staff, as well as some tuition revenue because of loss of enrollment. And then Providence 3 Preschool rents the side rooms from us here in this building, and they are not in operation this year. And so we've lost the rent from that program. So this is kind of where we were with those projected shortfalls. But if you look on the next slide, Janie, this is where we're hoping that we will find some support to help with that shortfall. First, we under budgeted by 20% for our expected revenue for sales tax. I know Tommy has mentioned that things are looking pretty good over the last couple of months, and we're really hopeful that we're going to come in better than that 20% that we under budgeted. And then again, that hold harmless bill that we are really hoping will come forward. But also in going line by line through our budget, these are areas of projected savings within the current budget that I wanted to mention. Again, reallocation of general funds that could be supported by CARES Act. So where we've had to purchase things for COVID, that we would be able to get some of those reimbursed back in either through the GEAR fund or through the CARES fund that will allow us to have those funds replenished back into the general fund. We're hoping to save some money on our water bill, although we don't have a whole lot of bills to look at yet for these first 9 weeks of school to know how that has changed. We're hoping to save some money on substitute teachers. We have only used one to date for the first 9 weeks, so that's pretty exciting. Our crossing guards, our bus driver, food service workers, and a new paraprofessional that we did not hire at the very beginning of the school year, those salaries were all delayed. We held back on those pieces because we didn't need those folks in those first weeks as we were going back in. Field trips, at this time, we're not intending to take any field trips probably this year due to the circumstances, sadly, but those are some funds that we're going to be able to hold on to. Travel and conferences looks very different. We're not going to conferences and workshops or doing travel these days, so that will be a piece of our budget that we will be able to hopefully identify savings. Some custodial and maintenance supplies that we will be able to cover through CARES funds that could stay back in our general fund and support that, as well as materials and supplies, because we have really worked hard with our principals to say, spend only what you need. They have done a very nice job of asking our teachers to really prioritize what their needs are, as opposed to things that they would like to have or add into their repertoire. We're really keeping a close eye on that as well. I was asked to share the current carryover amounts from the school's funds balance, and these were reported to us by Mr. Adams and Tommy over the last week or so. As you all are aware, we have a textbook reserve that is used for textbooks and digital learning resources in our classrooms, as well as the amounts that have been reserved for future needs, capital needs, future high school needs from previous years, as well as the budget surplus from FY20. And the last slide I have for you, you always ask me a little bit about preliminary thoughts for next year. I hope you all have been able to see over the last several years, we try not to come in with a whole lot of wish list items moving forward. But I'm going to keep that additional custodial support wish on my list because I think that we need that at Waddell. I think we have 2 custodians in a massive building, and it would be wonderful for us to be able to identify some additional support for those folks. We have already identified a need for an additional special education para for a student that we know is coming to us next year that's going to require a one-on-one support. And that's a position that we need to identify. And ideally, this is a possibility. I would love to be able to make that ITRT an 11-month position. That person came in and did a tremendous amount of work for us this summer. We were able to pay him on an hourly basis, but that really is an 11-month position because of all of the training and the pieces that need to be prepared for the start of the school year in terms of technology. As far as staff salaries, again, we are striving to really bring our salaries up to competitive pay across all employment areas. So that is our teachers, our paras, our secretaries, our school nurses, our administrators, and we want to continue to work on that plan, as well as we really hope that we can do raises for our employees this year. As you know, we did not have raises or salary steps at all this past year. Our newest information is that the state is planning for a potential 2% salary supplement for school employees. We hope to be able to work with that for our employees. So I hope I left you with a little time for questions on that end, and I'm happy to answer any that I can.
Leslie, go right ahead.
Well, I'll ask again then. So assuming you do, the hold harmless bill passes, how do you feel you're doing?
I feel like we're in a pretty good place. Tommy and I went line by line. We are pretty much on target with many of our lines because our staffing is on target with where we are. We're under budget in certain areas, and we will continue to monitor that. I'm hopeful that bill goes through. I'm also hopeful that we will get good reimbursement back from this meals program, and I've never experienced that before, so I need to watch that as we go through the first months to see what does that reimbursement look like compared to what we typically get for income and revenue from the cafeteria sales. So we'll have to watch that. And then again, as hopefully as we get some students back in, we'll be able to recoup some of that tuition loss that we had. But otherwise, this is just a unique situation. We didn't know that all the enrollment pieces would happen the way that they did. And that's the biggest piece that we're really focusing on right now, that we'll hope to continue to provide savings in all these areas. And I'm happy to follow up. I told the city manager I'm happy to meet with him on a monthly basis to look at those numbers so he can see where we are. Tommy and I meet on a regular basis to look at line by line to make sure that we're on target with those expenses, and we're looking at the revenue as it's coming in. And we're certainly seeking any other grant opportunities or funding support. We did apply for a safety grant. We're hoping to maybe be able to get some of that back in for some of the things that have been done in our schools and in our buildings that would help those as well. So any way that we can do that, we're monitoring as we go.
So at this point for this school year, you don't feel like you need anything, any additional funds or anything from city council at this point? You've got everything covered that you need?
We're in a good place right now, provided that we don't have that issue with the ADM and the harmless doesn't go through. I think that's going to be our biggest issue.
Right.
We're going to do everything on our end that we can to hold our funds very tight, make good decisions regarding our funds and our spending, and make sure that we're doing everything we can.
Do you anticipate Richmond, though, adjusting the textbook reserve requirement to allow schools breathing room with the requirement? I mean, I thought they were potentially tweaking that to give schools breathing room, and I got scared that was because they were foreshadowing not helping us out with the ADM, because they were saying you can dip into that textbook reserve fund.
I saw a mention of that. I haven't gotten great information on that. It's something I'm hoping to bring up at one of our weekly calls with Dr. Lane, but I certainly will put that down in my notes to look at. I saw a brief mention of that in some of our emails that came through, but I don't have all the details on that yet.
Do we experience any savings from middle school athletics not occurring or buses not running? And I know you could probably talk a lot about how extracurricular activities may or may not take off, but I also wanted to ask about the high school expenses. And if we have a solid understanding of what the high school, what their numbers look like, and I just want to avoid getting a bill for care, COVID-19 related expenses, because that will throw our budget out of whack in a hurry.
Absolutely. I'm happy to follow up with Dr. Thompson on that. I've had 2 conversations with him after your previous questions regarding CARES Act, possible expectations from Rockbridge County. Both times I have spoken with him, he has said no, they are not planning to bill us for their CARES Act expenses or our 17.1%. That he has said that to me twice now, but I will certainly go back and ask again.
Don't ask him again. If he has said it
I
twice,
was going to say, I won't ask him about that, but I may ask him about any other, you asked about some expenses, but definitely he's been great about that to say, no, we're not anticipating billing you for CARES Act recoup costs.
Is the hold harmless bill in the Senate? Is it in the House? Are they both working on different versions of that, or who can we kind of lean on to
I can send you some information. I'd be happy to do that. I've seen it on both in the legislative information that's been sent to me, and I can send you the most current information that I have. I've also sent out some information to our staff as a community because VEA is really working on this as well. And they have sent out information about how you can send letters. And it's truly just a click, add your name, and send the letter to the folks that are really working to make this go through. So I'm happy to send that your all's way following the meeting. I'll do that in the next day or so.
That'd be really helpful, and we can distribute it from here. Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, second question. So in the meal part, you said the Lexington City Schools is getting reimbursed. Who's doing the reimbursement on that? Is that the USDA, and is it substantial or is it helpful?
It is helpful. And we are promoting that program because every meal that we hand out, we are able to get some reimbursement back for that. So we're promoting that. Again, I don't have the numbers initially. I believe, I don't want to misspeak because I don't want to not say the right thing. I believe I heard the figure 11,000 today for the first month or so of reimbursement that came back to us. But again, like I said, I want to go back and see what we typically get for revenue in a month with our lunches versus what that looks like. And I'm happy to follow up on that with you as well as I get more information.
Thank you.
Sure.
We are almost at the 8 o'clock hour, and certainly Rebecca's available for additional questions. But Rebecca, thank you for the presentation and the update and addressing some of the questions that are on people's minds. And I hope that there are a lot of people watching on Facebook to have a better understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it in these truly unique times. But very grateful to the school board, Glenn, Tammy, Molly, Owen, and Tim, for your all's dedication and support. It has not been an easy or fun job this summer and this fall, but very grateful for the work that you've done and the support that you're getting from your families. I know is paramount to being a successful school board member. Rebecca, and often forgot, is the school board clerk, who is the backbone of it all and makes you all look a lot smarter and capable. So thank you, Stephanie Birch, for your commitment and dedication to our children. I know we'll stay tuned. At this point, if the hold harmless doesn't come through, if I remember the slide, it was about 180,000 deficit that we need to address. And thank you for you and Tommy keeping a keen eye on that. And I'm very optimistic that we'll have a rush back of students once we get in person and things get closer to something that we're accustomed to. What I won't say normal because there is no normal. But thank you all very much. We will adjourn the City Council for work session and invite Chairman Diet to do the same.
Yes, we'll adjourn the school board meeting as well. Thank you all.
Thanks. Y'all are welcome to stay for our regular meeting. It's going to be thrilling, I can assure you.
Not in there.
But for folks that are perhaps just dialing in, we had our work session run over. And if council doesn't mind, we'll take a 9-minute break here, let you freshen up, and we'll reconvene at 8:10.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Okay, they're taking a 9-minute break. So you're back.
Janie, if there's any way to put up a screen that will start at 8:10, that'd be terrific. If there's not, that's okay too.
Okay, 8:10. All right, well, let me, let's,
Figure it out and take 8 minutes to figure it out.
I don't know that I have that ability on the fly. So
There, that's probably unmuted then. No, that's good. That's,
There we go.
okay, there we are. Thank you.
Good evening, Landy.
Hey, Frank, how are you?
Welcome to Zoom. Doing great. Doing great. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call the Lexington City Council October 15, 2020 meeting to order. It is the appointed hour of 8:10. First item of business, if you all would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and
justice
justice
for all.
Thank you all very much. Next item is consideration of the agenda. And I did want to have you consider adding 2 items. One is a nugget in history with Eric Wilson under presentations. And the second, I'm going to look to the city attorney for confirmation, where we have 2 closed session items. I'm sorry, that both of them are listed on the agenda. So there's just the one, adding Eric for the under presentations. And are there any other?
Frank, this is Jared. On that point, the second item on the closed session agenda was listed as the acquisition of real estate. It should read the disposition of real estate.
Very good. You got that, Miss Alexander?
I do.
Excellent. Thank you, Jared. Any other changes to the request for the agenda? Hearing none, we'll approve the agenda with the addition of the presentation. Next, before I move into proclamations and a little cheerier note, I'd like to start out on a more somber note. If you haven't read your October 5th edition of the Ring Tum Phi, there was an article written by our own native Lexingtonian, Kaylin McCabe. An article entitled "Students Report Multiple Incidents of Harassment in Lexington and on Campus." It was August 17th of 2017 when this council shared words very confidently that the city of Lexington stands united in its rejection of hatred, racism, and violence. And it's disappointing to need to remind people of that. But in light of the circumstances that have happened on the campus and around the city, it's incumbent upon me to offer those words again. I'll remind us all that respectful dialogue, kind debate, and genuine love are the behaviors we must embrace, must promote, and must purposefully pursue. We categorically reject bigotry and racism, and we must continue to lead and work hard to be kind, to be respectful of our diversity, to promote inclusiveness, and to be a beacon of civility every day. And encourage everyone to do their part in accomplishing that. President Dudley was quoted in the article as saying, "Every single one of us deserves to feel safe and welcome at W&L and in the surrounding area." And again, I just wanted to acknowledge those issues that occurred in the past couple weeks. And I know that probably everyone listening here is aware and works hard to be a community member and supportive community member. But we need to continue to focus on that and bring civility and kindness and love to our community every day. So thank you for that indulgence. Proclamations, I'm not sure what year we're on, but we are a frequent flyer on the Extra Mile Day in Lexington. And I'd like to offer this proclamation for our community. Proclamation establishing November 1st, 2020 as Extra Mile Day in Lexington, Virginia. Whereas Lexington, Virginia is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Lexington, Virginia is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas Lexington, Virginia is a community which chooses to shine a light and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and lift up fellow members of our community. And whereas Lexington, Virginia acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 500 Extra Mile cities in America and is proud to support Extra Mile Day on November 1st, 2020. Now, therefore, as Mayor of Lexington, Virginia, I do hereby proclaim November 1st, 2020 to be Extra Mile Day. I urge each individual in the community to take time on this day to not only go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to also acknowledge all those who are inspirational in their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, families, community, country, and world a better place. Adopted this 15th day of October, 2020. So I read that into the record and encourage everyone, don't wait till November 1st, make it an Extra Mile Day every day. As you go through town, you may see beautiful flowers. The baskets have been retrieved from the light post, but the trees and flowers in town, Celia Rainey goes the extra mile frequently, unbeknownst to many of us, to make downtown so good looking. And the other morning when I was walking my dog at about 6 o'clock in the morning, I ran to Butch Grant waiting for the rest of the crew to repair a sewer line that had failed. So lots of people in our community going the extra mile for all of us. So thank you for the Extra Mile team in California that spearheads this. And would also just acknowledge it is October and I am wearing a pink jacket. For those of you who don't know, I'll remind you that it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and Cornerstone acknowledged that today with all of our team sporting pink. So always looking for a reason to wear my pink blazer, and today was that day. With that, I'd like to move on to presentations and ask Eric Wilson to join us for a nugget in history, briefly share a few things with us in preparation for the coming weeks and our election.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Friedman and Council. I'll email a version of this to follow so it can be in full, but I wanted to share some of the core and frankly surprising points ahead of Election Day. This is going to be a story about an election, what I would say is one of the most momentous elections in Rockbridge and Virginia history. Special election on October 22nd, 1867. Then, for the first time, Black men in Lexington, Rockbridge, and across the state would enjoy the opportunity to vote and a stake in the process of democratic reform. The task of that vote was to decide whether the state would hold an integrated state constitutional convention as a condition of the Reconstruction Act Congress had passed that spring. In 2 years, the work of that convention would lead to the ratification of a new state constitution that opened the door to Black male suffrage in the Commonwealth a year before the federal ratification of the 15th Amendment, making that the law of the land. But that 1867 vote was transformative, even if we see in hindsight that so many of those freedoms were soon and long retracted. For their part, no Virginia women were entrusted with that right or that responsibility until 1920, as our recent commemorations of the 19th Amendment have noted. So on the Wednesday before our November 3rd election, RHS, the Rockbridge Historical Society, will feature another installment in our local Black History series and run that in the News Gazette. And I'm grateful to acknowledge the skill and collaboration here of Larry Spurgeon, who's been so vital to much of the summer research about the city's 3 cemeteries that you all have seen. So here's the key point, and it continues to flabbergast me, frankly. Especially in our own age of low voter turnout and political disillusion. Of the 105,000 Black freemen and freedmen who first registered to vote in Virginia, 88% of them actually cast ballots for the Constitutional Convention. It's an 88% yield. And in Rockbridge, the tally was even higher. 91% of Black Rockbridge men voting for convention delegates, alongside 42% of registered white voters. In and of itself, that broad statistical snapshot really tells the story of a community, even as other legal bars, racial violence, and the economic restraints of post-war recovery still held durable sway. Our article will go into some more detail about individual profiles of men who appeared in those voter rolls, and those were carefully handwritten into ledgers, which were digitized by the Library of Virginia, and Larry Spurgeon is now transcribed, and we'll have on our website for people to research. They'll be broadly and freely available. We're very excited about that service to the community. Individually, collectively, those cues allow us to see some important transitions here, from enslavement to emancipation, the transitions of free Black men before the war to wider horizons that follow. And they allow us to see how this generation of men paved the way for a wider tree of professional, civic, and cultural leaders that came after. Among the hundreds we see voting in 1867, to point to just a few families of more familiar note, were the fathers of Reverend Lilburn Downing, of activist Eliza Bannister Walker, and of poet Spotswood Stiles. So to preserve your time, I'll leave the last movement of this, the kind of third act, to that note. But given your sustained work this summer, I simply want to forecast that will focus in on the cemeteries where most of these men were buried. First, the first wave of those after this 1867 vote would have been buried in the unnamed cemetery, the first cemetery that the city formerly owned, at the top of Green Hill at the corner of Washington and Lewis Streets. Later, after about 1880, in Evergreen Cemetery, which holds, I want to stress, further and intimate ties to this particular election from many angles. Most notably, Judge William McLaughlin, for whom McLaughlin Street is named, was one of the two Rockbridge electors sent to Richmond by the votes of 923 Black men and 145 white men of Rockbridge. And it was McLaughlin in 1880 who would convey to the city of Lexington the 6 acres of land on which Evergreen Cemetery would be established for the growing needs of a segregated burial system. So I really appreciate the time for moments like this. Certainly the work you put in this summer, and as I've talked with some of you, I hope that this brings a particular relevance and resonance to the election ahead, with thanks for your leadership in that service.
Thank you, Eric. It goes without saying that the more you know, the better you can do. And learning a bit of our history, many of the items that you spoke of are around us, relics in the cemeteries, as well as in periodicals like the News Gazette and the Rockbridge Advocate, who chronicled quite a few things of our history. So thank you for providing that nugget and helping us focus on our past as we look to do better in our future. And I know I committed that you wouldn't be a featured speaker at every meeting, but we'll see how things progress.
Can't do it. Can't keep up, but I appreciate it.
Thank you for your work in our school division as well.
It's a privilege.
Next item on the agenda is public hearings. And I would like to call on Arnie to introduce this topic. And after he finishes, I'll conduct the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor and Council, good evening. We do have a conditional use permit request for the property at 408 South Main Street. The request is for a bed and breakfast conditional use permit. I'm going to go quickly through your packet on page 1 of 8, which is also page 5 of your particular packet. You see a list of conditions that was approved on May 17th, 2007. The previous owners, the Boulderians, were approved for a renewal of a conditional use permit for a 6-bedroom bed and breakfast inn, again in that 2007 date, with those 6 conditions that you see there. Mr. Patton and his investment group purchased the property after 2007, and they were not aware of the 10-year time limit. So there was a renewal was due in 2017, and that did not occur. So currently there is not a conditional use permit approval for the property. And they're trying to correct that situation by applying for the conditional use permit for a bed and breakfast that you have before you. On the next page, you see a location map and then photographs of the front and the rear of the property. And I also included in your staff report the bed and breakfast definition, and a number of use and design standards for bed and breakfast. As you see, that goes from A all the way through Q, so we do have quite a number of use and design standards. On page 5 of the packet, but also page 9 of your overall packet, there are conditions for issuance. So the 4 conditions, A through D, these are the ones that you normally see and use for your review and approval or denial of a conditional use permit. In staff's opinion, staff is supportive of the conditional use permit for a 6-bedroom bed and breakfast and makes that recommendation for approval. Planning Commission held a public hearing on September 24th and also makes an approved a motion unanimously to recommend approval with the 6 staff recommended conditions. On page 6 of the report or page 10 of your packet, you see those 6 modified conditions. So on the first page, we included the 6 original conditions, and you see that on page 10, there are some modifications. You're already aware that staff no longer recommends that you have a certain limited period of time for a conditional use permit, that if you're going to approve it, you might as well approve it in perpetuity. There's already a mechanism in the conditional use permit section that allows for a revocation if there are more than 3 substantiated complaints. So that in staff's opinion, there's really no benefit to having a limited time on a approval for a conditional use permit. So therefore, the first condition is recommended to be deleted. Next 3 are the same as you had seen previously, or that were approved previously, I should say. And then the other 2 are minor modifications to numbers 4 and 6, in that the previous approval allowed for a 6-bedroom bed and breakfast and allowed social functions, but those were not specifically included in the conditions. So I'm just trying to bring that forward so it's specifically included to allow social functions and to have a 6-bedroom maximum number of rooms. Also included in your staff report are the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting. And we only had 1 inquiry from the public, and that occurred today. Bonnie fielded that call, and the person was just curious on what the request was and had no comment, positive or negative. That's all I have for our staff report, and be happy to answer any questions.
Members of council have any questions for Arnie? Arnie, on that page 10 in the staff recommendations, social functions are allowed and a log of social functions held on the premises will be maintained. Is there a city log that details what you're looking for, or?
No, sir, there's not a specific format for that. It's simply in many of the conditional use permits. And if I'm not mistaken, in a couple other locations, it simply says a log, and it does not say, number of functions, how many people stayed. That's just there in case there is a complaint, and I'm able to show up and, as an example, for short-term rentals, say how many A rentals and how many B rentals. So it's really for enforcement, but no, we do not have a specific formatting for that log.
Very good. And just for emphasis, there was no notice by the city in 2017 that this expired. And once Mr. Patton was made aware, he's worked to correct this and worked expeditiously with staff to get it accomplished.
That is correct.
And again, there is no expiration with the conditional use permit. It goes with the land, not the owner. And as you point out, there are mechanisms for if it's not used for a bed and breakfast, for instance, for 2 years, the conditional use permit would fall off.
Yes, sir. Those statements are correct.
Terrific. Thank you, Arnie. At this point, I'd like to open up the public hearing. And Margaret Howard is with us. I know that she wanted to speak on this issue. Margaret, go right ahead. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. I own the property directly contiguous. My address is 406 South Main Street. So I'm directly to the north of this property. I presume that this application is entirely non-controversial. I think it should be non-controversial. I simply wanted to come and tell you that I approve of it. I have absolutely no objection. And the Pattons have been wonderful neighbors for the 10 years that they have been there. And I hope you approve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us and for sharing those comments. Janie, is there anyone else that you're aware of that wanted to join us this evening or speak to this matter?
I don't have anybody else.
Very good, very good. At this point, I'd like to close the public hearing and ask for council's consideration.
This is Leslie, and I move to approve conditional use permit number CUP 2020-02 with the 6 staff recommended conditions.
Second.
Excellent. We got Leslie with the motion, David with a second. Ask for a roll call vote. Ms. Strawn?
Do we have any discussion?
I'm sorry, discussion, please. My apologies.
Actually, I kind of have a comment. The whole social function thing, it seems like the city should offer a little bit of guidance on that. Like, what is a social function? Is it 2 people getting together? Is it 4 people getting together? And I mean, how can you really keep a log if you don't know what a social function is? So, I mean, that goes beyond this particular item, but I think maybe we should look into that and figure out a way to maybe kind of define that a little bit better if we're asking people to keep logs of social functions.
Would tend to agree. I see Arnie's got that noted for discussion at another time. Any other discussion related to this request?
I have a question for the planning director. The first paragraph, applicable zoning ordinance sections that defines bed and breakfast and the occupation by the owner or a resident manager. Is that occupation, what's the requirement, I guess, of that occupation? Is just when there are guests in the house, or does it extend beyond when guests are not in the house?
I would opine that it's not specific. In other words, if you're running a bed and breakfast, you're either supposed to be the owner operator and be in attendance when you have guests at a minimum. I cannot say that it extends to the period of time when you don't have guests. I think the most important part is to be an owner operator and be there when your guests are there in case there are issues so that you can take care of those issues quickly.
That's what I would suspect. I was just looking for some clarification is all, but I think that answers it.
Thank you, Chuck. Any other questions on this particular request? Hearing none, would ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Ziegler?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Strong?
Aye.
Ms. Hentz?
Aye.
Mr. Ayers?
Aye.
Alexander?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Landy, for your good work at the Abigail Inn and continued success despite all COVID and other challenges.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes from September 17 work session, regular meeting, and October 1 work session and regular meeting. You received those in your packet, and were there any changes, concerns, questions, or issues? Hearing none, we will approve those as presented. And thank you, Janie, for your diligence on keeping us up to date on those. Next time, citizen remarks and comments. Janie, I'm not aware of anyone when we spoke earlier today. Have you heard from anyone else or received any contact?
I have not.
Very good. Next item would be reports and communications from boards and commissions. Blue Ridge Resource Authority. Mr. Smith. Darn that. There you
go. Blue Ridge Resource Authority met on Monday. The old landfill, otherwise known as phase 1, is is just about done. The grading is completed. We're waiting for the final engineering report and for DEQ to sign off on it. Plantings have been made to help stabilize the soil and to help it look a whole lot better. If you're driving down parts of the county, you don't quite see as much of a big brown scar on the landscape. It's starting to green up nicely. So I'm looking forward to that being behind us, at least as far as the physical part. The lingering financial obligation will be with us for a very long time. Cell 2 financing is very similar to the bond refinancing that we're doing with the city. We're waiting for the rates to be established on October 28th. We do have an out if they're too high, and we can side with a bank offer, a private bank offer instead. I'll keep you updated with that. And we are now applying for VRS programming for the employees that are eligible. The current rate that the landfill is paying is the same as the Rockbridge County City Government, which is quite a bit higher than if they were a standalone authority, which we are. So we're moving forward with getting that established with VRS, so we can save upwards. The estimate is over $30,000 a year. So that's not an insignificant savings on an annual basis. So that'll be good to have. The Virginia Investment Pool account has been established, and I imagine we'll be moving funds into that post haste, so we can start a better return on the money that we do have as soon as possible. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you, Chuck. Hearing no questions. Main Street, Lexington.
Yeah, we met last Tuesday. Two businesses downtown are interested in having murals, so the design committee is working with them. It looks like the murals will be on boards, so instead of directly on the building, so they will be somewhat temporary. And Main Street is working on refurbishing the sign by Tractor Supply. Fraser and Associates are advising them on the design, and they'll advertise downtown events that are going on, such as the farmers market. The Lift Lex program is transitioning to a series of webinars for business owners to prepare them for the holiday season and to help them with their online businesses. The destination marketing through Facebook, the leadership is transitioning from Gail McLeod to Jamie Gooden. And thank you to Gail for all her great work she's been doing. She's done it for several years, and it's been a very successful project with having the businesses contribute a small amount. They've been getting a lot of advertising through Facebook, having it direct marketed to certain groups. And events. So Halloween, they'll have the downtown trick-or-treating. And as I mentioned before, it'll be all day Saturday on Halloween from 10 to 5. It sounds like a lot of businesses are going to participate. We're hoping to spread out the number of trick-or-treaters. Everybody wear a mask, and the businesses handing out candy will have gloves. And so it should be a safe way of having our trick-or-treat. We'll also continue the candlelight processional. It'll look different this year. It'll be a video. So we'll see how that goes. And we'll have the Christmas parade on December 4th. It'll be at 6 p.m. But again, that'll look different. The floats will be out, and people will drive by and review the floats that way from their own cars. The Chamber of Commerce is having a virtual candidate forum on Tuesday, the 20th. At 6 p.m. You can email Chamber for the Zoom link or listen live on 3WZ 96.7 FM. And even though we lost all of our college events for the fall, the downtown businesses are seeing quite a bit of tourists, and they have gotten comments from the tourists that they're glad to see that we're doing the PACT program, making sure that all the businesses are operating safely during this time with masks and other precautions. And Just something else that just came up, just as a heads up, WNL we were planning for events and looking at what the winter will look like. And WNL is going to start their winter term a couple weeks later than usual. So they'll start on the Tuesday after MLK Day in 2021. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Leslie? Leslie, thank you for your report. And Gail McLeod epitomizes the extra mile, the efforts that she's taken on and investment that she's made personally has provided a great deal of support to many businesses in our entire community. So thank you for uplifting her. Planning Commission.
We met last Thursday and we had a presentation from Jeff Martone about the CIP. So now we've heard from Jake Adams and from Jeff Martone so that Planning Commission can be educated on what that process is and hopefully participate and tie in the comprehensive plan with that process in the future. And then we talked about catalyst projects. Catalyst projects are low cost or no cost projects that the Planning Commission hopes to implement to start off our comprehensive plan. And they're also fairly short term. We should be able to complete them within a year. So we started that conversation, and at our next meeting, we're hoping to pick out a couple of catalyst projects to work on in the near future. That's all I have.
Any questions for Leslie? Got to be a great feeling to have the comp plan off your plate. Regional Tourism Board, Mr. Ayers.
Yeah, tourism will meet again on Wednesday, October 21st, but I did have a couple things I wanted to mention. First off, tomorrow morning, the city manager, Jeff Martone, and I will be meeting with Regional Tourism Director Gene Clark, Eric Wilson from the Historical Society, and Main Street Lexington's Rebecca Logan to discuss and kind of brainstorm design plans for the cemetery signs at Evergreen and Oak Grove. One suggestion was to borrow design elements from Regional Tourism's wayfinding signage program, which was basically a project that Fraser and Associates did for tourism about 6 years ago. And the idea was to put signs, kind of a unified, uniform signage system throughout Rockbridge County, Buena Vista, and Lexington, as they do in other cities like Charlottesville or Williamsburg. You might be kind of familiar with that kind of signage. So one idea was to maybe borrow design elements from that wayfinding signage program for the cemetery signs. But of course, we want to make sure that any signs for the cemeteries are historically appropriate and aesthetically pleasing. So that's something we'll be discussing tomorrow. As far as local events, a lot is going on in Rockbridge this weekend. First off, if you haven't had a chance yet to see the new Loveworks installation at Natural Bridge State Park, created by Mark Klein, this weekend is supposed to be beautiful and would be a perfect time to do so. And in addition to the Loveworks sign, families with young ones can also explore the Natural Bridge State Park's new Children's Discovery area, which had its ribbon cutting on October 9th. On the north side of the county, the North Rockbridge Harvest Fall Trail event is on Saturday from 9 to 6 p.m. And you can enjoy a day in the country exploring scenic back roads full of fall color and discovering the local products, unique gifts, and friendly welcome from the small family-owned businesses of North Rockbridge County. There's over a dozen businesses that are going to be participating, including the Brownsburg Museum, Wade's Mill, and the Quiltery. And for a full list of participating businesses and activities, you can visit the North Rockbridge Trail Facebook page. And finally, also this Saturday, there's the 11th annual Large Car Magazine Southern Classic Truck Show at Lehigh Travel Stop. This is an all-day event with a truck parade that passes through downtown Lexington at 10 a.m. And in the evening at Lehigh, enjoy a free outdoor concert by country western performer Tony Justice. And does anybody have any questions? No. Okay.
A little something for everybody in Rockbridge County this weekend.
That's right.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dennis. And thank you for the work the tourism board's doing, supporting all these different regions within our community. Rockbridge Area Department of Social Services, Ms. Hentz.
Yes, my report's short. We have our board meeting this coming Wednesday. We do have an October 22nd tour. The board members will be touring the 4 locations for the possible building the new building site. Magnolia Square will be one, College Square Shopping Center, Stonewall Shopping Center, and then a vacant lot at 534 East Nelson Street. And that, again, that will be on October 22nd. We'll be going out as a group, touring those 4 locations. And that's my report.
I hope you have a Chamber of Commerce day and not a duck day.
Where roughly is 534 East Nelson?
So I think that's a property owned by Jay Melvin. That's behind.
Sheets.
The cleaners and sheets?
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah, behind there.
Thank you, Leslie. Any other questions? Michelle, thank you for your report. Raro.
We held our regular meeting last Wednesday. You may have been able to see the great coverage in the News Gazette that has been featuring our clinics, and they've been extremely well received by a lot of kids in the community. Obviously, all the clinics have been outside and just been a great outlet for kids. But the staff is now transitioning to look toward the cooler months, and we plan to dip our toe into indoor activities. And you may have seen some publications about this. I think an alert Rockbridge went out. But our plan is to begin with a basketball program for boys and girls that are 7 and 8 years old. And we will have those kids in groups of no more than about 25 in a gym using the Waddell gym, where we're allowed to, we can lower the rims. Typically that gym could hold even more kids on the court, but we're obviously going to go down to about 30% capacity. So about 25 kids will participate on 4 consecutive Saturdays for about 45-minute sessions. And we'll have a couple sessions on those Saturday mornings to allow for the numbers that we hope to sign up of the boys and girls. But serving this group of kids, our junior basketball kids, will give us the ability to see how it goes. We plan to charge $10, but then we plan to provide a basketball to each kid so that you know, our sons and daughters are only using their own basketball. And I know it looks good on paper, it's our plan, but basketball practice is happening at the high school and at colleges, and these kids are going to be doing some basketball clinics on Saturday mornings. If it goes well, we will expand that to possibly the younger kids. And then in January is typically when we do the older kids, our seniors anyway. And so we want to see how this will go. And so we're excited to offer this to the kids, and we hope that a lot of kids will sign up and give us great numbers. Also, we continue to take care of all of our facilities outdoors, getting ready for hopefully spring sports, to be quite honest, hoping that we're playing baseball in the spring and everything for that matter. So we've got to be overseeding fields, aerating, cutting grass, obviously. And then, you know, just a point to share, you know, some folks, we look at our infields. Let's say you go by Brubaker, Fox Field, you know, you look at some of our infields and you might see them being grown over with weeds. And, you know, that's a product of us not playing on our fields. And it's unfortunate for a baseball guy to see an infield with weeds on it. But in a way, it's actually, in a way, it maintains the infield because we don't want to kill all the weeds when we're not using it. Because if you kill all the weeds and you drag the infield and you stir up the dirt, it turns to dust and it blows away. And that just leads you to have to put more dirt on it more regularly. And so right now our fields are not being used, and we're maintaining the dirt. And so hopefully in the spring, we'll be able to kill those weeds, and we're playing baseball and softball and getting back after it. So I know some folks that see the weeds and they think that people aren't doing their job, dragging the infields or taking care of them, but there's a purpose to it right now that we're not offering our regular programs. And so we're trying to save a little bit of money by not having the dirt blow away after we drag it and maintain it. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does the council have any questions on the RARO report? David, I'd just say you raise a great issue. Frequently people get concerned about maintenance of things and don't understand it. And Usually people are distracted with the football season or something else and don't realize that those infields tend to usually get overgrown this time of year. And the crew does a great job of cleaning it up and getting it play ready in the spring again. So, and thank you for raising that issue. No other questions? Go to threshold. Ms. Alexander.
No report this week. We will have a report in November because our next meeting is Tuesday, the 20th at 4 p.m.
And that's it. Virtually. Okay. So anybody can join in from anywhere.
Right.
If you haven't attended a threshold meeting, you should do so. CARES Committee, anything to report? Obviously, the school's got a lump of money and we've gotten some back, and it almost feel like it's a New York City shell game. It's like which money is where and when we have to spend it by.
I don't think, we don't have a formal report. You know, I think we've got some time, obviously, before all the funds need expended. We did the appropriations last meeting. If we have funds coming back to us from the schools, we'll certainly put them to good use, but we don't have anything formal to report as far as I know. Is that right, Jim, Leslie?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Terrific. Thank you all, and thank you for your work in dealing with that ever-changing landscape of CARES qualifications. Next item is Mayor's report, and my apologies to the applicants. I didn't get through all of those to bring any names forward tonight, but I pledged to do so at our November 5th meeting to keep us in touch. A couple of items in no particular order. Do want to alert to everyone on council that November is just around the corner. And it's been almost a year since Jim started, I think almost to the day when he came and hung out with Brenda a little bit. So we'll be working on his annual review, performance review here very shortly. And just be on the lookout for emails with details on how we'll do that. We'll use the same ICMA form, I believe, that we've used in the past. And I've asked Jim to share with me any ideas he has for having a more productive review. So that'll be forthcoming. Remind everyone tomorrow, a wonderful celebration and public event from 3 to 5 at Jordan's Point. It's going to be about 75 degrees and sunny, I feel certain, for our Mark Riley's retirement party. Obviously 27 years on the force with Lexington PD. We are sad to see him go, but know this is a terrific opportunity for him and his family. And tomorrow, I hope you'll be able to steal a little bit of time and celebrate him. If you don't, I hope you'll make a point to express your appreciation to him personally. Speaking of appreciation, very grateful for Chuck stepping up and leading a recycling committee that we're putting together to look at addressing our lack of recycling right now and how we'll be doing that in the future. Timing wise, Chuck was very kind and generous with his time when VML reached out and wants to create a task force that's being established by the General Assembly, waste diversion and recycling. It's a diverse group of stakeholders on an issue that has the potential to directly shape conversations around the future of waste diversion and recycling in Virginia. And Chuck's agreed to represent the city of Lexington and certainly our area. Rockbridge County may participate as well, but elated that Chuck is embracing that and working to make our world a little bit better place. And two other things. Leslie mentioned the Welcome to Lexington sign out by Tractor Supply. It's been a couple of years in coming. We began discussions a little over, or I think, well, approximately 2 years ago about that sign and the future for it. It took us about a year and a little bit of investigative work by Dennis to determine the Women's Club had brought together several stakeholders who put in money and created that sign. And we've looked forward to passing the torch from the Women's Club to Main Street Lexington to take responsibility for that sign to be able to make it a little bit more progressive and just communicate and be a better tool for the city of Lexington. It is located in Rockbridge County, so we'll have to adhere to all the rules and regs of their planning and zoning. Not a problem, but really excited the creativity under Jeff Hughes's leadership as president of Main Street Lexington and the future of that sign. So keep an eye out. Should be exciting and a wonderful addition to our way of welcoming people to our community. And lastly, I had seen or received something from, I guess, a notice from the regional library system, and I wanted to put a plug in for tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock, growing up Black in Rockbridge County. Sounds like a fascinating topic, and I hope that if your schedule will allow, you'll be able to join in for that. And that is all I have to report, and I would call on the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. First, I'd like to bring to your attention the IDA. It's scheduled to meet Monday, the 26th at 5 o'clock. That will be a virtual meeting. The major item of discussion will be the $130,000 in CARES funds that council recently approved for small business grant program. The IDA, of course, is a conduit to getting that money out to businesses. And like the first round of the CARES funds, Main Street Lexington has agreed to accept those funds should the IDA approve. And then they will distribute those funds to the eligible small businesses in the city of Lexington. So congratulations or thanks from to Main Street for taking that on once again. It's a wonderful program to help our small businesses in this community as they still struggle. Many of us have not probably thought of the farmers market as regularly as we may in the summertime. It's transitioning to a new season. And unfortunately this year, because of COVID, they've had difficulties finding indoor spaces where they can still keep the market active. So they have requested that they could stay in their same location through December 9th when they have their Christmas market. And that has been approved. So they will remain in the parking lot outdoors until that time frame. And then they will reassess what they can do over the winter time. Typically they still function over the winter, but I'm not sure that's going to be the case this year. Did want to also bring to your attention, and we all know early voting has been very successful. I spoke with Jan Yowell, the registrar, this evening, and she reported that over 1,180 people have voted in the city thus far, which is 30% of our registered voters. And if you haven't voted yet, you can still vote until Halloween. You should come by now while the weather's still good. Don't wait for bad weather, and don't wait for the lines that may be there on the voters' day. Do it now, do it early. Recycling was mentioned a couple of times already tonight, but I did want to bring to your attention again that tomorrow we will meet, staff and I, with the staff from Rockbridge County. The county's administrator and his staff are proposing some solutions, potential solutions for the lack of recycling we have here in Lexington at this time. I'm sure there'll be fair solutions and proposals, but I have not seen them yet. And it does not mean that should they provide something that is a good proposal for us, it does not mean that the city won't be paying for our share of that proposal, or the city residents won't be paying for it. Rockbridge County will, I'm sure, provide something that is adequate and fair, but they're not going to subsidize our cost, of course. Fire department activities. Sometimes we don't look at the big picture of what happens from day to day with our fire and rescue. We just wanted to give you an idea of the numbers of calls they go on a monthly basis. And this month, they have put in 72 calls in the city of Lexington, 13 in the city of Buena Vista, and 147 in Rockbridge County. That's 232 calls for the month of September. If you did the math, it's over 7 calls a day. Now, that doesn't mean they've actually provided a service at those calls, but they've responded. They've been there to back up our neighbors in the surrounding communities, just as they back us up. And so they get on the scene and provide what they can, either from a rescue standpoint or firefighting standpoint. In addition to those traditional activities, in many cases, the fire department delivers other services we don't think of. And sometimes they're as simple as helping a resident install a child safety seat in their vehicle. Some residents have some difficulties, questions that they're asking, and our firefighters respond and make sure that our children are as safe as they can be in the vehicles and throughout the community. So it's a very small thing, but it's one of the things that makes, I think, Lexington special, and our folks get out there on a daily basis and provide those services. I also wanted to mention the police department. We know they're busy all the time, but what do they do on a monthly basis? Now, some of these things we don't like to hear about our community for any number of reasons, but we have to provide care and safety to our businesses and to our residents. And so our police department on a monthly basis can issue up to 117 parking tickets. Up to 19 misdemeanors are processed. On a particular month, we had 9 felonies and 4 DUIs each month. At the same time, they also provide 120 directed patrols in our downtown area and at our schools. So we focus on those areas of the community that are important to us while providing services to the entire community. Similarly, DPW is always very busy. I think there were a couple mentions earlier of some of the things that we've seen go on, but they are continually busy month to month with construction, utilities activities, right-of-way and street maintenance, solid waste. Our arborist was mentioned earlier, and she is out busy on a regular basis in the community. We have folks working in the cemeteries and parks. And some of the things that they do regularly are citywide tree trimming. They winterized the pool recently. They also installed in city facilities more touchless faucets to make sure that we can keep our facilities safe from COVID. They mow in the parks, the schools, the cemeteries. They have provided inspections for the Department of Conservation and Recreation of the Moores Creek Dam. It's a required inspection. We've had water line breaks, unfortunately, on Main, Washington, and Honeysuckle Streets this last month, and also at our Connor Spring water line. So those things keep them busy, and they're unfortunate. But we have an older system. We have systems that both water and sewer are susceptible to deterioration and the pressures of the earth on those systems. The earth itself shifts, and when that happens, our systems are somewhat compromised. Want to also mention that working with staff, I'm putting together a list of CIP and equipment replacement funding items. As we all know, a number of CIP and equipment needs were delayed last year because of COVID. This year, as we put together our second budget, a number of those needs were also cut from the budget. So I've asked the departments to put together their priorities from fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21 that we could consider for perhaps funding. As we know, we had a $500,000 plus carryover. That carryover is typically used for CIP items and equipment replacement funds. In as much as we are working without some of those items now to try and provide services to the community, and we've also delayed some projects that we had planned to provide or present to the community, I'd like to suggest that we consider, City Council considers funding those items. As I continue to prioritize those items with city staff, I anticipate bringing them to you either the first or second meeting of November so that you can consider those items, and maybe some or all of them can be processed and brought to our community, brought forward. I also want to mention a very interesting and important event that's occurring, or a series of events that's occurring, sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce with Main Street Lexington, Tourism, Rockbridge County, and other partners. And it's called the READY program, to assure ourselves in our region that we're ready for economic development opportunities and grants that may arise. So they're putting on a series of events over the next month. And so October 29th, there will be an event on downtown revitalization, November 5th on technology, November 12th on manufacturing and workforce, and November 19th on tourism. So I think it's a very proactive way for us to try and look at the opportunities that are present in our community. And again, it's a wonderful thing to see our stakeholders cooperating on a very regular basis to bring up these opportunities and explore them as in a community with our stakeholders. Back to some of the things our staffs do, and planning and zoning is constantly involved on a daily basis on looking at our community, both from an economic development perspective, a zoning perspective, and enforcement in our community. This last month, there was over 93 enforcement activities. Those include commercial and residential building inspections, as well as erosion and sediment control inspections. That doesn't mean there's been a violation, but they've showed up on site to do inspections and to make sure that whatever is being performed or built in our community is safe. They've also done a number of permits, which is very helpful to our community in a number of ways. keeps business activity and housing needs met as those properties are improved and expanded upon. The value of commercial building permits this month alone was $272,000, and residential building permits was, where is that on my report? $422,000, nearly $423,000. So even in the economic times we're in today, there's a lot of investment in our community, and our staff does watch those things very carefully. That's all I have for my report, and I'll take any questions if there's any from City Council.
Members of council have any questions for the city manager?
I don't have any questions, but I'll just share. I mean, we keep talking about recycling. Auto recyclers just a few miles away will take and actually pay you for your aluminum and tin, and they'll take your cardboard if it's flattened off your hands. They will obviously not take glass or plastic. There's no market for that. We certainly know that, but that they are a resource to take your aluminum and tin cans and your cardboard if it's flattened. So that's something for the folks that are filling up their garages right now with cardboard and everything.
I had a Zoom call with 50 Ways folks, and their agenda item was recycling in the city, and there was a Rockbridge Area Conservation Council member present in the meeting, and I illustrated that yes, auto recyclers over BV does take some of the materials that you're holding. So you know they had a bit of a reminder, and it was a good opportunity to educate each other on what you can and can't, and why and how and when, and yeah, metals and cardboard were mentioned, and that outlet. So and thank you for noting that.
But also point out for those that are hoarding their newspapers, Shenandoah Framing has a significant need for newspapers, so they can always be dropped out there, and that's obviously next to our high school out on Greenhouse Road. So lots of ways to independently get it accomplished. And yes, thank you all for your efforts and for those reminders, to be sure. Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Any other questions for Jim? Very good. Next item, City Attorney. What do you have for us?
I have no report at this time.
No report?
No report at this time.
Very good. I just would, I guess, make note for the public that there was the court case, was it last week? On the water tower?
Yeah, it was last Thursday, and I can touch on that briefly. I think we all know we had hoped to come to some sort of resolution a week ago today. And unfortunately, we did not get a clear ruling from the judge. So the case is still pending, and we are still trying to figure out a way forward on that.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. New business. Anybody have anything for the good of the cause? Very good. We do have the closed session with 2 topics, and I want to thank everybody for joining us. I don't think we plan on any action when we come out. Is that correct, Jared?
That's correct.
Just updates and information with our council. So you're welcome to Zoom back in when we're finished, or we can alert you. But at this time, we thank everybody for joining us. And Ms. Alexander, if you can read us into closed session, please.
Thank you. I move that Lexington City Council will convene in closed meeting in accordance with Section 2.2-3711, subsection A, paragraph 7 of the Code of Virginia, a closed session for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel on actual litigation concerning the infield quiet title action. In addition, Lexington City Council will convene in closed meeting in accordance with Section 2.2-3711, subsection A, paragraph 3 of the Code of Virginia, a closed session for the purpose of discussing disposition of real estate for a public purpose. I've made the motion. Is there a second?
This is Leslie. I second it.
Thank you. It has been a motion and properly second, and we'll need a roll call vote. Dennis Ayers.
Aye.
Michelle Hentz.
Aye.
David Sigler.
Aye.
Chuck Smith. Leslie Strawn,
Aye.
Chuck Smith, are you there?
Aye.
Thank you. And I vote aye. Ayes have it, and we can move into